So the first thing I would say to you is I'd be innately curious about that client's business of doing business, whether it's a foundation, business to business, or business to consumer. I'd really want to understand where they're taking their business, how they feel they're going to compete, what marketplace they're in. I wouldn't be talking about me, I'd be talking about their business of doing business. I'd want to start thinking about briefs and RFPs and start understanding the mission they're on, the journey they're on. I'd want to be reading their shareholder reports. I'd want to be Googling. I want to be going online. I'd want to be using my own network. If I'm trying to build a deck, I don't go to Home Depot anymore. I go to Leo. Leo's my buddy that's a do-it-yourselfer. If I want to find out what is the start of a perfect breakfast, I go to Nancy, who's a dietitian that is a good friend of mine, or I'd go to a blog. If I want to go and find out about an organization, that information is out there. You need to become experts in the business of doing business. What are the key competitive drivers? So you shift the conversation from, are you a competent meeting planner and what is your day rate? Are you a good hotel and do you have hot water? To, let me talk to you about how I can enable you and help you to get where you're going. I'd want to be an expert in what meetings do to transform culture. I'd want to be reading constantly about psychology and anthropology and consumer behavior and how important it is for people to socialize to change. I want to know the impact that religion had on society. I want to know the impact of political leaders like Obama have in terms of getting people to believe. And I'd want to be an expert in that because that is what these organizations are starving for. The next thing I'd want to understand is what's the gap we have to close from where the client is now to where they need to go? What's the current perception of culture? Perception is so important. It's never reality. How do people feel about the leaders in the organization? How do people feel about their ability to compete? Are they in a culture of fear because they've just gone through a bunch of cost cutting and they think their job's next? Or are they in a culture of hope? Perception is a great story about perception. And just imagine that this is a daily occurrence. Every day at sunset, a farmer and his wife sit out there in their rocking chairs, sipping tea, and the farmer just sits there and he reads his daily newspaper. 20 years they've been doing this. One day, his wife snaps, grabs the newspaper out of his hand, rolls it up, and whacks him on the head. Farmer, what was that for? She goes, 20 years of lousy sex. Farmers, they had no idea that perception exists. Thinks about it for a minute, grabs the newspaper and whacks her. She goes, what was that for? He goes, knowing the difference. Okay, so sex gets you alive. All right. It really is about your ability to listen to the cues of the organization because your job isn't to do a meeting. Your job is to move a culture from here to there. Listening is a lost art in business. We're so hyper-connected, emails. How many times are people talking to you while you're... We've just lost the ability to listen and pick up the cues that'll provide us with the insights we need to move cultures. Great story about listening. This old man walks into a medical clinic for his annual checkup. He's walking in the door and this technician comes by, very busy with lots of x-rays and stuff. The old guy says, Sonny, how old do you think I am? The guy looks up at him, says, I don't know, 72 years old? He goes, I'm 84. Walks in, strutting in. Feels pretty good. Goes up to the receptionist and says to the receptionist, how old do you think I am? She looks at him. She goes, oh, you're probably my dad's age, 71. He goes, I'm 84. He's so happy. Sits down beside this really old lady and looks at this old lady and says, how old do you think I am? She looks at him. She grabs him by the back of the hair, puts her lips on him, gives him one of these massive kisses, pulls away and goes, you're 84. He goes, how did you know that? She goes, I heard you tell the receptionist. Listening is a lost art, and it's so important for you to take those cues. The next thing I would think about is I'd stop thinking of a meeting as something that begins and ends in 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days. I want you to imagine going forward a bow tie as you leave this meeting room. The center of the bow tie is your meeting, it's your event. We'll come to that in a minute. But what do you do in advance to set people up so that they believe in the Golden Cathedral? Technology is so robust now for your industry. Evites, video clips, teasers. I mean, the old days of sending out a T-shirt with the big, laminated, people make the difference theme. The consumer's not engaged. How do you set up a community so you start having a dialogue with them and try to understand what they want to get out of that conference? My speech today is very much built on the fact that I had a half-an-hour conversation saying, what did you want out of this conference? So how do you start getting dialogue going with the delegates in advance? Because if you do, and you're part of it, you're now part of the inner circle. You're no longer part of putting on stuff in an event. You're part of a transformation. The meeting itself, it's no longer about putting a bunch of pieces together as a meeting planner and hoping that everything comes together. It's your stage. Your job is to get shining eyes. Your job is head, heart, and hands so people walk out, they understand where the organization's going. They feel it, they want to be part of it, and they're going to change their behavior when they leave. So how do I start using the choreography of how they arrive? What the opening event is, the speech. How do I start becoming a student of how to communicate so when your client says, I want to give you 8 hours of meetings back to back, you go, the audience won't accept that anymore. This is how we need to stage meetings going forward. This is how we're going to change the behavior of your culture. And then coming out of that meeting, how do you start building a community? So when that meeting finishes, how do you package up what happened, the emotion, the excitement, the energy, so that it has the lasting effect, so that that perception that existed today, you start moving it towards the perception that needs to exist in the organization if they're going to believe in their golden cathedral. And that's what we have to think about going forward. We have to think about the perfect storm. It's not going away. The forces of change are going to get more ferocious. Marketplace is going to get more competitive. That's the fact. But we got to look at it in terms of the perfect opportunity. And the opportunity is we're part of an organization that works together, the suppliers and the planners and the creators that come together to change cultures, to animate vision, to make people believe. To make people believe they can break the sound barrier, they can land in space, they can launch an iPod when there's 300 MP3 players in the market. You've got to be part of that world of transformation as opposed to just being in the world of commodities and stuff. So I want to end on one last quote that I think hopefully will capture everything we talked about. And to make this quote work, I want you to leave this room for a moment and imagine you're members of the British Parliament in the late 1930s. And your Prime Minister at the time, Chamberlain, prefers to operate in the old. He doesn't believe the world is changing. He kind of likes debate and dialogue. Things will get better next year. It's just the recession this year. Our business will get back to where it was. He just really believes in status quo. But at the very top of Parliament sat a lowly backbencher, out of favor by both parties. Nobody liked this guy. They considered him a warmonger. All he kept talking about was what America was now the new superpower, what was going